my name is Sarah Nazami, and I'd like to talk to you today about my experience in the field of working with kids with ASD, with the autism spectrum, and I'd like to talk to you about the what I do, how I do it, and what I've learned through the experience of working through Learning Arts, the site, um, training in the role of a behavioral technician. So each kiddo, well, that's what we call them, each kiddo works on the spectrum. Um, we'll be having a someone above them, a supervisor, and then having the behavioral analysts above them. And so each kiddo's on the spectrum really will uh, what we're going to do, their intervention plan basically will be based on how what they need and what level they are. So I've had an experience, really interesting experience, with a kiddo on one side of the spectrum, and then a kiddo on the other side of the spectrum. So one that's really, really high functioning, and then another kiddo that's still that is lower functioning. And so I'd like to start with the what I do in each of those um, with each of those kiddos. So what I would do is each is called a task analysis. So a task analysis is what the supervisor sets up, the behavioral specialist sets up, so that I will be able to run intervention plans with the kiddos. So if the behavioral specialist sees that the kiddo does not show like emotional reciprocity, doesn't really interact with kids on the playground, doesn't really know how to respond and actually have a conversation with another kiddo, then that would be something we'd work on. And in this case, one of the kiddos, and confidentiality is very, very important, so do not mention their name, but one of the kiddos that I do want to talk about has an intervention plan that looks a lot like basic social skills. So we're working on what he's working for to not raise his voice. That is the main goal, to limit as much aggression and to work on his social skills. And so it's really interesting to see that he will run programs where he will actually work for. So it's like a contract, it's a contingency. We'll say we will work for this, and this kiddo loves the Switch, his Nintendo Switch, so he will work very hard for it. In the meantime, we work for breaks, so I also will start the intervention plan now, and I will repeat this, and I will say, would you work for this? And then, and then I'll repeat that, say, oh, we'll work, and then, and the kiddo will say, oh, play. And so we'll work on, in this case, emotions. So identifying emotions. So in this case, the kiddo will identify himself to be confused, happy, sad, or excited, so, or even annoyed. So that way he will be able to address those emotions. And he'll say, I'm feeling silly, I'm feeling excited. Or if someone bothers him, he'll say, I'm feeling annoyed. And that way he can actually address that with other parents. And I find that really exciting and also challenging. But that is exciting to see that I can help him identify his emotions. I'll actually help him identify those emotions on site. And then we'll also go through programs where He'll actually go through a story and be able to identify pieces of the story. And we'll run programs where he has to work with money and counting change and being able to total it, and also working with clocks. So social learning, um, cognitive skills. And the other kiddo, who's on the other side of the spectrum, um, does the same thing. He'll work for, and he really loves his breaks. So he'll love to read me his stories. And so he writes a lot of stories and loves to talk about them with me. And so with him, I'll actually work on cognitive and empathy. So those are the things that he will have to work on. And so we'll actually work on him being able to show kindness to others. And so we'll go through scenarios where there's a kid and we'll put our arms down. Sarah didn't have her lunch today, and we'll make the face, we'll model. And it's called modeling and role playing and rehearsal, and we'll actually show him what it looks like. And with each of the kiddos, which is also a challenge, is we have to prompt them. We have to prompt them immediately. It's called errorless learning. And we'll prompt them to be able to say, hey, this is what you need to do right away. You know, you need to call 911 right away in this case. So those are just an example with his emergency protocols, where he has to figure out what to do with an emergency and what to do with strangers also. And so those are little things that we're running, and conversation starters, how to properly start and end a conversation, which is really exciting. And so I feel with this site, the most challenging thing is that they'll put you out on the field right away, and that you have to learn, differential programs where you're putting tons of information all at once, and then also generalizing, which is another key term. And they have to learn we'll have to learn to help the kiddo generalize information, that he'll be able to use it at home and say, okay, I use a spoon and fork at home, but I also will use it at a restaurant. And so when that happens, that's called generalization. And we'll go through, extincting behaviors, which is removing them, and also, dealing with other types of behaviors. So working in this field that's the challenging thing. It's working with behaviors. It's prompting. It's the challenge. It's an exciting challenge to be able to help a kid overcome these steps, and just watching them. That's the most satisfying part, is watching each kid, show kindness. I had a kid, the higher functioning kiddo. He actually looked at me and said, I like looking at your face, and this completely changed me inside. I did not know much about kids with ASD, but I know that they are sweethearts. They'll hug, and they're loving, and they're so kind. And I found it so rewarding, which overwhelmed me. Although there were challenges, I felt they were satisfying. And so to see this kiddo also, he, without me asking, he put this table that we were working with away. And so it's small, rewarding, small things that are rewarding, but it's very challenging to stop and think, hey, these are very small steps. Just putting a table away is very small. So I want to say that this has been a great experience. I love working with behaviors. Although it's challenging, I am helping these kiddos every day to learn about social, cognitive, emotional functionings, and also just seeing them change. And so their task analysis changes, and I get to see them grow and really enjoy what I do. This whole site and the program really allowed me to train the best way to help these kids grow in different ways. And so I just want to say that this practicum, although it was challenging, it was rewarding. And so that was that was a great, great experience.